With the continually rising toll on the Taurian navy, Hackett ordered Shepard to the Perseus Vale after the Quarian migrant fleet opened negotiations. Upon meeting up with the Quarian Admiralty Board, though, Shepard was informed of why they had seemingly disappeared early into the conflict. 17 days prior, the migrant fleet had launched an offensive of their own with the intention of retaking Rannoch. Initially they were successful through countermeasures developed by Admiral Zen, which crippled the Geth fleets, starting with strikes against 4 Geth worlds, likely including Haestrom given its use as the meeting point, making their way to the home system and destroying the Dyson sphere-type structure that the Geth consensus had been constructing. As they made their approach to the planet itself, an unknown signal activated which immediately increased the Geth's overall effectiveness. As a result, the migrant fleet became entrapped between Rannoch and the Geth, led by an enormous Geth dreadnought which they had barely been able to scratch in exchange for the loss of multiple frigates. With all this information, the implications became obvious. The Quarians had only offered to negotiate because they had gotten themselves in over their heads and were at risk of losing everything for the first time since they had fled during the Morning War. Teaming up with Tally, Shepard set out to board and destroy the Geth dreadnought, which was also housing the signal improving the Geth. During the space battle, Admiral Corus was shot down by an orbital cannon on Rannoch, using what little control of the ship his crew still had to destroy it to limit further Quarian losses. Progressing to the source of the signal, Shepard discovered that it was being transmitted through Legion as a signal booster who had been shackled to the ship. Fortunately, the process to disable the shackles was relatively easy, and afterwards Legion deactivated most of the ship's systems as a sign of good faith. However, instead of using the opportunity to escape, Admiral Gerrel pushed forward to destroy the ship without bothering to confirm whether Shepard and Tally had made it to safety, with Shepard's team narrowly escaping in a Geth starfighter. Although the initial signal was disabled, a backup on Rannoch itself was activated, leaving the Quarians trapped, although with enough time to retreat to the temporary safety on the other side of the system's star. While Legion used its processing power to find the Geth base transmitting the signal, Shepard prepared to go planet-side. To begin with, Shepard and Legion entered a Geth outpost to disable starfighter waves to give the Quarians more time until Shepard could move her attention to finding Corus. While Shepard interfaced with a portion of the Geth consensus, Legion convinced the programs that had been serving in the starfighters to side against the Reapers, which then downloaded themselves into Geth Prime mobile platforms to exit the outpost, remaining planetside until the hostilities could end. On the other side of the galaxy, meanwhile, things had begun to turn around in favour of the Taurians as the Krogan began to pour in as reinforcements, even claiming a sweeping victory on Palaven. In what became known to the galaxy as the Miracle at Palaven, the Taurians were able to draw multiple Reaper capital ships away from Palaven's orbit to give room for transports carrying the first wave of Krogan to deploy to the surface. As the initial Reaper response was limited to collectors and husks, the Krogan had little trouble making their way to Taurian rally points and passing heavy supplies to Taurian forces, which were then able to make their way to Reaper ships of all types across the planet and destroy them. With the combination of this distraction and the reinforcements, the joint Taurian and Krogan forces were able to retake territory en masse. Although Vixus and Garrus would later describe the Krogan involvement as only being able to slow the Reapers down. Back on Rannoch, the rescue of Corus had been able to unify the civilian ships within the Quarian fleet, just as the source of the signal had been located. To deal with it, Shepard needed to paint a target on the exact point for the Normandy to hit it in a precision strike, while the migrant fleet began to engage the Geth again, when Shepard discovered that the signal was being generated by another Reaper destroyer. Initially fleeing from it, Shepard ordered for the targeting device to be linked to every remaining Quarian ship to coordinate fire from them, eventually bringing down the Reaper. Once it had been dealt with, Shepard was faced with another dilemma when Legion suggested the idea of uploading the Reaper code used to enhance the Geth, although it would almost certainly have had the impact of wiping out the Quarians, which had immediately returned to targeting the Geth fleet. However, Shepard, with the aid of Tally and Corus, was able to talk down the species mere moments before the upload was completed. With this show of faith from the Quarians, the Geth stood down as well, starting a process of coexistence and bringing both sides to fight the Reapers. The Quarians mainly used their fleets to provide for support and evacuation for the Taurians, while the Geth focused on the slowly expanding Reaper supply lines. Although very small scale, likely even smaller than the amount of Geth heretics that joined Sovereign, there were still fights involving hostile Geth, which were theorised to be mobile platforms uploaded with Reaper code. With the crew's morale up, and no immediate concerns, Shepard took the time to return the Normandy to the Citadel for a full repair, on the orders of Admiral Hackett, to make sure that it was at its best for the sake of the war effort. Also being given access to an apartment once belonging to Anderson, it wasn't long before even here Shepard found trouble, as she soon learns of yet another plot against her. According to a low-level Alliance officer, Maya Brooks, someone was trying to take over Shepard's identity, just as a squad of mercs burst in to try killing her. After regrouping with her squad, Shepard's attempts to stop the incident led her to the Citadel archives, and the discovery that the Cat-6 mercs trying to take her down were being led by a clone of Shepard. While chasing down the clone, she also discovered that Brooks was one of the masterminds behind the plot. Forced to fight to retake the Normandy, Shepard took down the Pretender and dealt with the betrayer when the latter tried to escape. Although Brooks claimed not to be indoctrinated, her plan would have played to the Reaper's advantage regardless of whether she was or not, since, at least as far as she and the false Shepard elaborated, they didn't seem to have much of a plan to stop the Reapers beyond simply flying around the galaxy while spacefaring civilization crumbled. With the incident over, Shepard and the squad began to enjoy their shore leave, with Shepard also meeting up with several of her former squadmates that had been unable to rejoin the Normandy. Later on, Shepard would return to the apartment to throw a party for all her squadmates, past and present, on the night before the Allied forces set out against Cerberus, the last time that many of Shepard's friends would see her or each other in person. However, once the repairs were complete and shore leave ended, the crew of the Normandy was straight back to the fight, just as it was reaching its darkest point.